Before we begin this heartwarming story, please let us know in the comment box where are you watching from. We love to hear from you. In the heart of New York City, where glass towers touched the clouds and the streets never slept, there stood a mansion that whispered of power, but screamed of loneliness. It belonged to Michael Watson, a name that made Wall Street shiver and made headlines sparkle. Michael was a self-made black billionaire, a man who had risen from the cracked sidewalks of Harlem to the penthouses of Manhattan. He wore his success like armor, designer suits so sharp they could cut, watches worth more than some homes, and a gaze so cold it could freeze an ocean. But no one saw beyond the ice. They didn't see the boy who had been laughed at for his worn-out shoes. They didn't hear the echoes of racial slurs that had followed him like shadows. They didn't know how betrayal by both friends and lovers had carved deep scars into his heart. His motto had become a bitter truth. They smile to your face and stab your back, especially them. The people who looked at his skin before they looked at his soul. To the world, Michael was ruthless, unforgiving, alone by choice. But in truth, he was alone because he couldn't afford to be hurt again. Then came the illness. It started quietly. A fever here, a cough there. But when you're used to being untouchable, you ignore the warning signs, until they refuse to be ignored. Michael collapsed in his own marble hallway, gasping for breath. His staff panicked, begging him to go to the hospital. But Michael, ever the lion in his own den, roared back, "I built this empire alone. I'll heal alone." Stubborn, proud, afraid to show weakness. Private doctors came and went, but his condition worsened. The infection spread through his lungs, a silent enemy threatening to steal the very breath that had once shouted down boardrooms. His mansion, once a fortress of power, became his prison. Each room echoed with his labored breathing. Each night, the silence grew heavier. In his grand bedroom, Michael lay beneath silk sheets, but no luxury could ease the burn in his chest. His empire couldn't buy him health. His millions couldn't chase away the shadow of death creeping closer. For the first time, the man who had everything realized he had no one. The world outside his gates didn't know he was slipping. Or worse, they didn't care. His once loyal aides whispered about their next job offers. Business partners already circled like vultures, waiting for his fall. He was still breathing, but they were already writing his obituary. Desperation led his chief of staff to reach out, far beyond the usual high-end nurses of Manhattan. Far beyond the polished resumes and fake smiles. They needed someone different, someone who wouldn't be intimidated by Michael's sharp tongue. Someone who wouldn't flinch at his coldness. Someone who could stand toe-to-toe with a wounded lion. That's when the call reached Atlanta, Georgia. Luna Grace was a nurse known not for her pedigree, but for her heart. She wasn't born into privilege. She wasn't impressed by power. Her kindness wasn't a performance, it was her nature. When her phone rang with the offer to care for Michael Watson, people warned her, "He'll eat you alive, Luna. That man doesn't trust people like you. He's a billionaire. He's bitter. And he's black. He won't take orders from a white Southern girl." But Luna listened, smiled softly, and said, "Pain doesn't care about color, and neither do I." She packed her simple suitcase, kissed her aging father goodbye, and boarded a plane to New York. Not for fame, not for fortune, but for a man fighting a battle no one else could win for him. When Luna stepped through the grand doors of the Watson mansion, the air felt different. Heavy, tense. The marble floors gleamed, the chandeliers sparkled, but everything felt cold, lifeless, as if the walls themselves had forgotten how to echo laughter. And then she saw him. Michael Watson, the so-called King of Manhattan, lay in his bed like a fallen emperor. His face was gaunt. His once sharp eyes were dimmed by fever. But even in weakness, his presence filled the room. He looked at her, really looked at her. A white woman, barely 30, standing in his bedroom with calm blue eyes and no sign of fear. His lips curled into a sneer. "They sent you," he rasped. "A little nurse from the South? How fitting." But Luna didn't flinch. She stepped closer, placed her medical bag on the nightstand, and said in a voice that was gentle yet unshakable, "You can insult me, Mr. Watson. You can hate me if it helps you heal. But make no mistake, I'm here to save your life, and I will." For a moment, the silence was deafening, and then beneath the coldness, a flicker of something appeared in Michael's eyes. Curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, this woman was different. As Luna began her work, Michael's defenses stayed up. He challenged her every move, questioned her every decision, but Luna met his fire with calm waters. Every insult she answered with kindness. Every wall he built, she gently chipped away. She didn't see a billionaire. She didn't see a bitter black man. She saw a patient, a human being, one who had been hurt, one who was scared. And that was her superpower. The mansion was still cold, but Luna's presence was a quiet rebellion against that coldness. With every touch, every word, she planted seeds of warmth. Michael wouldn't admit it, not yet, but for the first time in years, he wasn't dreading waking up. He found himself waiting for the soft knock on his door, the sound of her footsteps, the calmness of her voice. The infection was still a threat, his body still weak, but beneath it all, something else was beginning to heal. Something he had believed long dead. Far away from the towering skyscrapers of New York, where ambition ruled and hearts turned cold, there existed a quieter world. Atlanta, Georgia. This was home to Luna Grace. She wasn't born into silk sheets or silver spoons. Her world was red clay roads, porch swings, Sunday church bells, and sweet tea shared under oak trees. But don't mistake her softness for weakness. Behind Luna's gentle smile lived a fire, one forged in the furnace of struggle. Raised by a single father, a retired Army medic, Luna learned early that life didn't hand out favors. While others played with dolls, she learned to dress wounds. While others gossiped, she sat by her father's side, listening to war stories that taught her the value of human life. She saw the ugly side of humanity, sickness, poverty, racism, yet chose kindness. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Her father used to tell her, "Baby girl, you can't change the world all at once, but you can heal it, one person at a time." And so she did. Luna became a nurse not for the paycheck, but for the people. She worked in the busiest ERs of Atlanta, known for her steady hands and steadier heart. Gang members, addicts, angry drunks. Patients who scared other nurses found comfort in Luna's calm. Her peers admired her. Her patients adored her. Not because she was perfect, but because she cared when no one else would. One doctor said, "Luna doesn't just heal bodies, she heals souls." On an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, as Luna sipped her lukewarm coffee during a short break, her phone rang. An offer. A billionaire in New York, gravely ill, demanding home care. But there was more. "It's Michael Watson." Luna listened quietly. When the call ended, she sat still for a moment, feeling the weight of history, of prejudice, of pain not her own. Then with a slow, determined breath, she whispered, "Pain doesn't get to choose who heals it, and neither does pride." She accepted the job. Packing wasn't hard. Luna didn't own much. A suitcase of clothes, a worn-out leather journal where she wrote her patient stories, and an old photograph of her and her father, both smiling with eyes full of hope. The flight to New York felt like stepping into another world. Gone were the wide-open skies, replaced by towering buildings that seemed to touch the heavens. Gone was the slow drawl of Southern kindness, replaced by the sharp, hurried chatter of ambition. But Luna's heart remained steady. She wasn't here for New York's approval. She was here for one man's life. The Watson mansion loomed before her, all glass and steel, a fortress carved into the city's heart. As she approached, the staff's eyes followed her, curious, doubtful. To them, she was an outsider, an anomaly, a soft Southern girl stepping into a lion's den. But Luna walked with quiet confidence. Her white nursing uniform didn't shine like the marble floors, but it carried something far more powerful: purpose. When she was finally led to Michael's bedroom, time seemed to slow. The room was vast, yet suffocating. Dark curtains blocked the city's light. Machines beeped softly, the only sign of life apart from the man lying amidst the shadows. There he was, Michael Watson. Even weakened by illness, his presence was commanding. His skin, rich and dark, glistened with sweat from fever. His jaw, though clenched in pain, spoke of defiance. His eyes, when they opened, were sharp, dissecting her in an instant. His first words cut through the silence. "So they sent me a Southern charity case." His voice was rough, dripping with disdain. Luna, unfazed, stepped closer. "No, Mr. Watson. They sent you a nurse. The best one they could find." He scoffed. "You'll run within a week." She smiled, gentle but unyielding. "We'll see." Luna knew the rumors. People would assume things. A white woman moving into a black billionaire's bedroom. The gossip would be merciless. But she didn't care. She wasn't here for scandal. She wasn't here for money. She wasn't here for love. She was here because a life was hanging by a thread. Because underneath Michael's arrogance, she saw something raw. A man who had built walls so high, even he couldn't climb out. And if no one else would fight for him, she would. That night, Luna unpacked her medical equipment, adjusting IVs, monitoring vitals, working as if his sneers didn't exist. Michael tested her at every turn. "What do you know about struggle, girl?" he asked, voice laced with bitterness. Luna paused, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Struggle doesn't wear just one face, Mr. Watson. Hurt doesn't come in just one color. But healing is universal." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it wasn't hate either. As days passed, Luna's presence became a quiet rebellion against the mansion's coldness. She hummed soft southern tunes as she worked. She opened the curtains, letting sunlight pierce through the gloom. She spoke to Michael not as a billionaire, but as a man. Slowly, cracks appeared in his armor. He'd ask about her hometown, about her father, about why she even cared. Each answer she gave planted a seed of warmth in the frozen ground of his heart. Luna knew this was no ordinary job. This wasn't just a medical battle. This was a war against loneliness, pride, pain, and prejudice. But she was ready, because deep down, she believed hurt people build walls, but love people build bridges. And if she could be the start of that bridge for Michael Watson, every mile from Atlanta to New York would be worth it. From the moment Luna Grace stepped into his life, the battle began. Michael Watson didn't believe in kindness without a price. Not anymore. Too many had smiled sweetly while sharpening their knives. Too many had shaken his hand while planning his downfall. To him, this soft-spoken Southern nurse was no different. Just another outsider. Just another paycheck chaser. So he made his distrust known, sharp and brutal. "You're just here for a paycheck, like the rest of them." His voice was low, laced with venom. His eyes, dark as midnight, locked onto hers, daring her to deny it. But Luna didn't blink, didn't flinch. She met his glare with a calm that disarmed him. "I've worked too hard to be dismissed by your pain, Mr. Watson." It was not a retort. It was a simple truth. And somehow it stung more than any argument. Their days became a delicate dance of friction. Michael ignored her questions, turned away when she adjusted his IV, pretended not to hear when she offered him water or checked his vitals. He'd mutter under his breath, "A Southern girl telling me how to survive." The irony. But Luna? She remained unshaken. She challenged him with her presence, with her patience. Every morning she greeted him with a soft smile. Every night she sat by his bed, reading out loud. Stories of people who had nothing, but still found a way to give. She spoke of her small Georgia town, where life was simple, but not always kind. "I've seen hate up close, Mr. Watson, in my own backyard, in my own schools. I know what it looks like when people decide you're less than them." Her voice was soft, but the weight of her words hit hard. Michael would scoff, but the cracks were beginning to form. As the fever ebbed and flowed, Luna stayed. Night after night, she shared fragments of herself. She told him about her father, how he'd been judged for defending black soldiers during his service, even by his own neighbors. She spoke of her dream to open a free clinic in Atlanta, a place where no one would be turned away for the color of their skin or the weight of their wallet. Michael listened, at first pretending to ignore her, but his eyes would linger. He noticed how her fingers moved gently, how she tucked loose strands of blonde hair behind her ear as she worked. He watched how her lips curved into a soft smile when she spoke of hope, a smile that had nothing to do with greed or ambition, For a man used to masks, Luna's sincerity was unsettling. One evening, as the city lights blinked beyond the mansion's windows, Michael's fever spiked violently. His breath came in ragged gasps. His body trembled, muscles betraying him. The machines beeped in alarm. And then he collapsed as he tried to get out of bed, legs giving way beneath him. But before he could hit the cold marble floor, Luna was there. Strong, steady arms caught him. For the first time, the man who had stood tall against the world was cradled like something fragile. Their faces were close, closer than ever before. His hand, dark and trembling, brushed against her forearm, pale, delicate, yet firm. His pride should have screamed. But in that moment, only one question escaped his lips. A whisper, raw and broken. Why do you care? Not with anger, not with suspicion, but with a quiet, aching confusion. Why would someone like her care for someone like him? Luna's eyes met his. No fear, no pity, just truth. She spoke so softly, yet it thundered in the silence. Because you deserve to live. A pause, a heartbeat, and be loved. The weight of her words hit him harder than any boardroom betrayal. For so long, Michael had believed love was conditional, transactional, that people only loved what they could use. But here was this woman holding his broken body, offering nothing but grace, not for his money, not for his power, but for his humanity. For a moment, time seemed to hold its breath. The air between them crackled, not with hostility, but with something warmer, something dangerous, something healing. Michael's fingers, rough and calloused, brushed her cheek as if testing if she was real. Luna didn't pull away. In his fevered haze, his forehead gently leaned against hers. Their breaths mingled, shallow, labored, human. It wasn't a kiss, not yet. But it was the kind of closeness that spoke louder than words. The ice was melting. That night, Luna didn't leave his side. And for the first time, Michael didn't ask her to. He didn't insult her. He didn't hide behind cold words. Instead, he listened as she hummed a lullaby, an old Southern tune, filled with longing and comfort. And somewhere between his pain and her melody, something inside him began to thaw. For the first time in years, Michael Watson allowed himself to believe. Maybe not everyone wanted to hurt him. Maybe, just maybe, healing didn't come with hidden costs. In the days that followed, their clashes became conversations. The jabs turned into jokes. The silence between them was no longer cold. It was comfortable. Michael started to watch her more openly, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the determination in her voice when she stood her ground. She was fire, warm, persistent, unstoppable, and slowly his ice gave way. The air inside the Watson mansion had changed. The walls still stood tall, the floors still gleamed with cold perfection, but somewhere between midnight whispers and shared silences, the tension between Michael Watson and Luna Grace had shifted, not vanished, but transformed. Michael's body was healing, slowly, stubbornly, but it was his heart that was changing faster, and it terrified him. Every evening, Luna would sit by his side, not as a nurse, but as a quiet listener. One night, as the rain painted streaks against the tall glass windows, he spoke, really spoke. I was 9 the first time they cuffed me. His voice was low, rough as gravel. He told her about Harlem, about walking home with his school books, only to be stopped, searched, humiliated, about how the world saw his skin first, his soul last. You learn early, Luna. They don't care about your dreams. When your skin don't fit their picture. His fists clenched as memories poured out, of betrayal, of fake friends, of women who smiled sweetly but stayed only until his wallet opened. He told her about his mother, the woman who raised him with nothing but love and empty pockets, and how watching her die slowly from an illness they couldn't afford to treat shattered him in ways no success could fix. Luna listened, no interruptions, no pity, just her hand resting gently on his. That simple touch was more healing than any IV drip. With each confession, the space between them seemed to shrink. What began as clinical care became something else. Michael noticed how Luna would fuss over his pillows, her fingers brushing his shoulder without thinking. He found himself watching the way her lips moved when she read aloud. soft and soothing. For a man who had built a fortress of distrust, Luna's closeness was a gentle siege. She wasn't storming his walls. She was warming them, melting them brick by brick. It was a quiet evening. No dramatic storms, no flashing cameras, just the soft hum of life. Luna was helping Michael sit up in bed, adjusting the pillows behind his back. "You're getting stronger," she said with a smile, breathless from the effort. He gave a half smirk. "Or you're getting weaker, nurse." She laughed, a real one. The sound of it filled the sterile room with warmth. But then, a small misstep. As she leaned forward to fluff the pillows, her foot caught on the edge of the rug. She stumbled, losing balance. And suddenly, there they were, face to face, breath to breath. The world seemed to pause. Michael's hand shot out, catching her waist to steady her. Her palms landed on his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart beneath her fingers. So close, too close. For a moment, they just stared at each other. His dark eyes, usually guarded, were now wide, vulnerable. Her blue eyes shimmered, reflecting the flicker of something neither dared to name. Then came the whisper, "You're not like the others." It wasn't a compliment. It was an admission, a surrender. Luna's voice trembled, but her words were sure. "Neither are you." The space between them evaporated. It wasn't a passionate, reckless collision. It was slow, tentative. Like two souls who had been taught to fear closeness were now daring to believe in it. Michael's hand, large and warm, slid from her waist to the small of her back, pulling her closer with a gentleness that contradicted his strength. Luna's fingers brushed along his jawline, feeling the roughness of his stubble, the warmth of his skin beneath. Their lips met, a soft press at first, testing, questioning. Then as the world outside faded, it deepened, not rushed, not forced, but filled with forgiveness, vulnerability, and a fire that had been smoldering in silence. Michael's defenses crumbled. Years of anger, suspicion, and loneliness dissolved in the warmth of Luna's kiss. And Luna, she felt every bit of his pain in that kiss, every wall he had built, every wound that had never been kissed better. In that moment, it wasn't just a kiss, it was a promise that not all touch comes to hurt, that not every heart leaves scars. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, neither spoke immediately, but their foreheads rested against each other's. Their hands remained tangled, unwilling to let go. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of words unsaid, of emotions laid bare. Michael was the first to break it, his voice barely a whisper. "You're dangerous, Luna Grace." She smiled softly. "Only to your walls, Mr. Watson." For the first time in years, Michael laughed, a real, deep laugh. It was the sweetest sound Luna had ever heard. That night, Luna didn't retreat to the guest room. She stayed beside him, not as a nurse, but as someone who had found her place. Michael didn't push her away. Instead, his fingers found hers beneath the sheets, lacing together as if they belonged there. For the first time, Michael Watson slept without the weight of the world crushing his chest, because beside him was a woman who saw him, the man, not the millionaire, and loved him anyway. The mansion, once cold and echoing with silence, now breathed with life. It wasn't grand gestures or lavish dates. Their love grew quietly like wildflowers between cracks of concrete. They cooked together in the vast marble kitchen, Luna barefoot, laughing as Michael, the once untouchable billionaire, fumbled with a frying pan. "For a man who built an empire, you're hopeless with eggs," she teased. Michael grinned, a rare, disarming smile that softened his sharp features. "I delegate, remember? But for you, nurse, I'll make an exception." In those stolen moments, walls crumbled. Titles disappeared. It was just Michael and Luna. Nights became their sanctuary. Gone were the clinical routines of medication and monitoring. Now they shared stories, laughter, soft music humming in the background. Michael would read poetry aloud, his deep voice wrapping around the words, making Luna's heart ache in the sweetest way. Luna, in turn, introduced him to Southern folktales, her voice rich with warmth and history. They kissed often, not in hurried, stolen pecks, but slow, lingering kisses that spoke of trust, of longing, of healing. Michael's touch, once guarded and hesitant, grew more certain, fingers tracing her collarbone, lips brushing the soft curve of her shoulder. But it was never rushed, never just desire. It was connection. It was two broken hearts learning how to beat in rhythm. Outside the mansion's safety, however, the world was watching. It began with murmurs, paparazzi lenses peering through iron gates, headlines crafting their own stories. White nurse seduces black billionaire. Is it love or leverage? Harlem's golden sun falls for Southern fantasy. Old wounds reopened. The world was quick to judge what it didn't understand. They dissected Luna's every move, her accent, her past. They questioned her motives. For Michael, it was familiar. They've been trying to tear me down since the day I bought my first building in Manhattan, he said, jaw tight. But this time it was different. This time they were coming for her too, and that made his blood boil. Luna never flinched. When tabloids dragged her name through the mud, she held her head high. Let them talk, she said softly, lacing her fingers with Michael's. They don't get to define us. In the privacy of their shared bed, they found solace. Some nights he'd wake from old nightmares, memories of handcuffs, of slurs hurled in dark alleys. And she'd be there, holding him, whispering, "You're safe with me." Other nights, Luna would cry quietly, overwhelmed by the world's cruelty, and Michael would wrap his arms around her, resting his chin on her hair. Let them look. Let them talk. I've been hated for the color of my skin my whole life. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away her tears. I won't let love be one more thing I'm afraid of. Their relationship, though hidden from public eyes, became a rebellion. Every shared breakfast, every walk in the mansion garden, every kiss behind closed curtains was an act of defiance. They weren't just fighting for each other. They were fighting for the right to love freely. Michael's board members whispered doubts. Investors raised eyebrows. A distraction, they called her. A liability. But for the first time in his life, Michael didn't care about the optics. He cared about the woman who saw him, truly saw him, beyond the headlines, beyond the bank accounts. Their favorite moments were the quietest. Mornings with Luna curled against his side, sunlight dancing through linen curtains. Evenings spent slow dancing in the living room, barefoot, no music but their heartbeats. One night, as they watched the city skyline from the balcony, Luna whispered, "Did you ever think love would find you like this?" Michael's arm tightened around her waist. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Number, but it found me the only way it could. Loud enough to break my walls, gentle enough to stay. Luna smiled, resting her head on his chest. In a world that had always been loud with judgment, their love remained a quiet, unshakable truth. The world kept talking, kept speculating, but inside their shared haven, Michael and Luna were building something stronger than rumors. Trust, respect, love. And with every kiss, every whispered confession, every shared dream of the future, they proved the world wrong. Their love wasn't a scandal. It was a sanctuary. It wasn't a fantasy. It was real, raw, fireproof. When Michael recovered, he held a press conference, not to talk about business, but to talk about Luna. He stood before the world and said, "This woman saved my life. Not just my body, but my soul. I judged her by her skin, just like people once judged me. I was wrong." He offered her more than a job. He asked her to lead his new national project, a health initiative focused on interracial healing, medical access, and community education. Then in front of reporters, he held her hand, looked into her eyes, and kissed her. It wasn't for show. It was real. A kiss the world couldn't deny. Michael and Luna's love story became a symbol of hope. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. They showed the world. Love doesn't care what color you are, but it does care if you're brave enough to fight for it.